So, you're on the hunt for a car that's cheap to buy but won't let you down, right? Well, today we're diving into 10 cars that are not only budget-friendly, but they're literally built to last, way past that 200,000-mile mark.
Okay, let's just get right into it, because this is the question that keeps every used car buyer up at night. We all know that feeling. You see a cheap car and you wonder, what's the catch? You worry you're just saving on the purchase price to spend an absolute fortune on repairs down the line.
But here's the thing. That's not always the case. Some cars were just engineered differently. We're talking simplicity, strong parts, and a design meant to last practically a lifetime. Now look, these aren't going to be the flashiest cars on the road, but they will get you where you need to go with what I love to call boring, dependable reliability.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about the used car gamble. Then, we'll get into some amazing compacts and practical family haulers. After that, we'll check out a few niche picks that might surprise you, before we wrap it all up with a smart buyer's checklist to make sure you find an absolute gem. You know, the real trick here isn't just about finding the right brand. It's about knowing which engine to get, making sure you verify that service history, and knowing the specific little weak spots for each model. If you can get all that right, well, you could end up with a car that completely outlives your expectations.
All right, let's get into our first category, compact and dependable. These are those small, efficient workhorses that are just perfect for city driving or as a first car.
And first up, of course, the legend itself, the Toyota Corolla. I mean, you simply cannot have a list of reliable cars without this one. Generations like the E120 have these super simple non-turbo engines with cheap parts, and if they're serviced properly, they'll just sail past 200,000 miles. A really key thing to look for is underside rust, so check that MOT history carefully. And here's the expert tip. Pop open the oil filler cap. If you see anything that looks like mayonnaise, that's a telltale sign of a rare but potential head gasket issue. Next up, the 8th generation Honda Civic. Oh man, I remember when this thing came out, it looked like a spaceship. And you know what? It's aged incredibly well. But its looks are only half the story. The real magic is the engineering. Honda's engines from this era are just famously overbuilt, parts are everywhere, and they just keep on going. You'll want to listen for any rumbling from worn wheel bearings and check the suspension, but honestly, if you get a petrol model with a clean history, it is a really safe bet.
And for a brilliant example of the beauty of simplicity, look no further than the first-gen Toyota Aygo. This is one of the simplest modern cars money can buy. Seriously, its tiny 1-litre 3-cylinder petrol engine is so robust, it's incredibly cheap to run, and it's super easy to fix. No, it's not glamorous, it's not luxurious, but as a little city car that will basically last a lifetime, it's almost impossible to beat.
Okay, let's move on. For those of you who need a little more space, we're getting into our next category, practical family haulers. These are the cars built to carry everyone and everything, without any of the drama.
And you can't get much more practical than the Toyota Avensis. This car is the absolute definition of a solid, dependable, unflashy family car. The key here, and this is important, is to stick with the petrol versions. Their simpler, non-turbo design makes them rock solid and cheap to maintain, while the diesels from this era could be a bit more fragile. Find one with a good service history, and you've found one of the smartest used buys out there.
Now, if you want that same practicality, but wrapped in a slightly more stylish package, look no further than the Honda Accord. We're talking strong engines, strong gearboxes, and that legendary Honda build quality. The advice is so simple. Just go for a good old-fashioned, naturally aspirated petrol engine. If you avoid the hybrids and diesels from this period, you'll get a sensible, long-term car that will easily cruise past 200,000 miles.
Okay, the Skoda Octavia. These things are famous for being dependable workhorses. I mean, there's a reason you see so many of them used as taxis, right? Because they share parts with the whole VW group, everything is cheap and plentiful. But it pays to be selective with the engine and gearbox. Go for a manual to avoid any potential headaches with the early DSG automatics. And for the diesel, you want to hunt down the older, tougher 1.9 PD engine over the more troublesome 2.0. And speaking of workhorses, let's talk about the Swedish legend, the Volvo V70. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Taking a car with nearly 300,000 miles on it on a 1,500-mile trip through the Alps, that's not just reliability, my friends. That is absolute pure confidence. The 2.4 petrol models from this era are particularly tough. They really are the last of the truly great, overbuilt Volvos. All right, let's shift gears a bit. We've seen the sensible, we've seen the practical. Now let's look at a few cars that prove reliability can also be fun, innovative, or, dare I say, even a little bit luxurious. Ah yes, the fun one, the Mazda MX-5.
Even though it's a sports car, it is famously reliable, and it doesn't matter which generation you pick. You've got simple systems, light parts, and strong engines. They just run forever. Now, the one big enemy of any MX-5 isn't mechanical, it's rust. So your mission is to find one that's been garaged or properly undersealed. Do that, and you've got a dependable sports car for years of fun.
Next, the original hybrid, the Toyota Prius. I know, a lot of people have fears about that hybrid battery, but listen, the Prius is well proven after being on the road for nearly 3 decades now. That clever hybrid synergy drive system actually reduces wear and tear on the petrol engine. And yeah, a brand new battery can be pricey, but affordable reconditioned units are now widely available. The proof? Just ask any taxi driver. Countless Prius cabs have done insane mileage and are still going strong.
And finally, for some quality on a budget, we have the Lexus IS250. This car is such a brilliant example of the difference between Japanese and German luxury. You get a bulletproof Toyota V6 engine and a super reliable gearbox, all wrapped in a luxurious interior that often has way more standard features than its rivals. Find a high-spec model with a good service history, and you've got yourself a luxury car that will last forever without the nightmare repair bills.
So there you have it, 10 cars that are cheap to buy and truly built to last. But remember, just choosing the right model is only half the battle. So let's distill everything we've talked about into a simple, smart buyer's checklist.
It really all comes down to this. Just follow these 3 simple rules. First, choose the right engine. Like we've seen, that often means picking a simple petrol over a complex diesel or an early, troublesome automatic. Second, verify that service history. A well-maintained car is absolutely everything. And third, know the specific weak spots of the model you're looking at, whether that's rust on an MX-5 or a specific gearbox on an Octavia.
And that brings us to the end. You've seen the absolute legends of longevity. The simple, the practical, and the surprisingly fun. So the question I want to leave you with is, after all that, which one of these would you trust to take you on the next 200,000 miles? Thanks for tuning in.